Right, hi Year 9. This is the fourth time I've tried to do this video, so I'm hoping it's going to work. Okay, so let's go from there. Right, title today is Parasitism and Mutualism. Okay, so please write that down. Write the date today as well, because obviously it depends on when you do it. So what I want us to do is, first of all, pause this video for me, and I would like you to have a go at the following. Right, you should be able to see a starter. I want you to describe what is meant by the term competition and what is meant by the term predation. Okay, so please pause it and have a go. Right, Year 9, I'm back, and so should you be. You should have put something, I'm not going to write this Year 9 because of lack of space, but competition are where organisms compete, and what they're competing for, Year 9, is a limited resource. Now, what I mean by a resource is anything from food to water to light, anything an abiotic factor, could be biotic, that an organism needs. And if it's limited, that causes organisms to compete. Boys and girls, people wouldn't need to compete if their resource there was lots of it. And predation is the relationship between a predator, hopefully you know what that is, and prey. Yeah, okay. Right, boys and girls, by the end of this screencastifier, you should be able to identify and describe a parasitic relationship. You should be able to describe the adaptations of two different parasitic species. And you also should be able to explain how mutualists benefit from their relationship. So it all sounds a little bit hard at the moment, but hopefully we will enjoy this lesson. So boys and girls, what I'm going to go through is a relationship you can get in the environment. Now, what I mean by that, this is a natural relationship, as in it's a relationship between two organisms, sometimes more. I'm not talking about a human relationship. I'm talking about a relationship you can get naturally in the ecosystem, a bit like the predator and prey relationship that we've already looked at. Okay, it's called, Year 9, you might want to be writing this down, a parasitic relationship. I'm going to explain that in more detail. So parasitism, that's what they call it, is a different kind of feeding relationship in which one organism, which is the parasite, benefits by feeding off a host. I'm going to explain it in more detail. And that causes harm to the host. Now, boys and girls, the parasite can either live in or on the host, which we'll talk about a little bit more in examples. And sometimes the host can die really quickly, or sometimes the host can survive for a long period of time because the parasite actually doesn't cause it that much harm. All right, so, what I'm going to do, this is where it went wrong for me last time. I'm going to show you a quick YouTube clip. If it goes wrong, I'm just going to carry on with the video because otherwise I'll be doing loads of them. It's a silent video, Year 9, so let's have a watch. Okay, I'm pausing that there, Year 9, because that's what happens. It all goes wrong from that video and something else starts playing, and it's doing it right now. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. Perfect. Okay, right, so hopefully now we're back to normal. Right, so boys and girls, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a new slide, Year 9, so sorry, a bit of patience, and I'm going to go through that video and also going to go through a parasitic relationship. Okay, so we should now know that there is a parasitic relationship. And what I mean by parasitic relationship, so let's write that down. Okay, parasitic relationship. And that is a relationship, boys and girls, between a parasite, and the host. Right, the parasite is the organism that attacks pretty much the host. The host is the organism. The parasite, sorry, my writing, lives in or on. So it's the organism where the parasite lives in or lives on. Okay? Now, the parasite, boys and girls, always benefits. And that means it always gets something good out of this relationship. The poor old host is always, what am I doing? The poor old host is always harmed. So that's a really important thing that you recognise. The parasite in a parasitic relationship always benefits, and the host, boys and girls, is always harmed. Now, if you remember that video was a cricket, and what that cricket did was it jumped into the swimming pool. Now, crickets can't swim, if you didn't know that. And you notice that what happened was there was a worm that came out of this cricket. Now, this was a parasitic relationship, boys and girls, because there was a parasite, which was the worm, that was living inside this cricket. No, and the cricket was the host. And the poor old cricket, year 10, actually committed suicide, okay, because the parasite made it do that. So the crickets jumped in a swimming pool. And why the parasite benefited, boys and girls, is because the parasite was able to survive. It came out of that cricket and it was able to find another host. The poor old host died and it was harmed, and therefore it was a bad relationship for either one. Okay, all right, so let's look through some examples. Right, year 9, this is an example of a tapeworm. A tapeworm is an organism, okay, it's a bit like a worm, it looks a bit like this, and it's a parasite. The human, or sometimes a pig, would be the host. Now, I don't want to obviously scare you, but sometimes when you go on a holiday, you've got to be careful being barefoot, because sometimes you can get tapeworms that can actually travel through your soles of your feet and get into your digestive system. So let me draw myself, my head, my arms, yeah, and I'm going to draw my intestines. Right, if you don't know, your intestines are all to do with your digestion. Now, what this tapeworm does is it gets inside the host. So ready? It gets inside it. So look, here's purple. Let's pretend this is the tapeworm. It's now in there here because it's got through. Sometimes it gets through what you eat as well. So it goes through. Now, hopefully you're realising, right, this tapeworm, what it does as a parasite, it benefits because what it does is it takes the nutrients of the host. So every time that human being was eating, all of the food that went down was actually going into the tapeworm, allowing the tapeworm to get bigger, and it wasn't going into the host. The human, the host or the pig, is harmed because it ends up lacking nutrients, which can be very dangerous if that tapeworm's in there for a long period of time. Okay, the tapeworm always benefits. Okay, really important that you understand that, boys and girls. So let me repeat that. A tapeworm benefits because it gets nutrients, because it's in the intestinal tract, digestive tract of the human or the pig. And also the host is harmed because it lacks nutrients. Hence, year 9, if you go to the doctor and you lose a huge amount of weight really, really quickly, the doctor would ask you, have you been on holiday? Because they always question whether you've been exposed to a tapeworm. Okay, so it's really important that actually this is put up quite quickly or realised, because it can be quite fatal for the host. It can end up in pigs, boys and girls, hence why it's really also important with your meat, because sometimes there could be a tapeworm in pork that's not been cooked properly. Boys and girls, I'm just checking that I'm still, yeah, because last time it stopped and I was so sad. Okay, right, next one, boys and girls, is the flea and the head lice. So it's called the head lice and flea. Boys and girls, fleas affect pets, your dogs, your cats. Head lice affect humans. They are parasites. Now, hopefully you're able to realise, I know this is a bit grim, year 9, but this is a parasite. And what it does is it actually uses its suckers here to feed and suck the blood from your scalp. So it's a parasitic relationship because the flea or the head lice sucks blood, and the blood it's able to suck, it's able to get nutrients from. So therefore it benefits completely. Yeah? The host, which would be us or a pet, is harmed, boys and girls, because believe it or not, you should know this, but it's extreme. Well, most people have had head lice when they were younger, not necessarily, but most. And the reason they're harmed is because it's uncomfortable, forcible, or it's itchy. Either way, is that life-threatening, boys and girls? No, that is not life-threatening, but it's still a parasite because it's still the parasite benefits by sucking the blood and getting the nutrients from your scalp, and the host is harmed because it's itchy and it's getting blood sucked away from your scalp. Okay, so hopefully that's quite clear. Boys and girls, this one shocks people a little bit. And it's called mistletoe. Right, mistletoe is a plant. Yeah, and what it's able to do is it lives in or on a tree. Okay, I'm going to explain this one by drawing a picture. Again, this is a parasitic relationship, year 9. So bear with me. I'm just going to put a new slide up. Let's have a look. Right, so why is this a parasitic relationship? So I'm going to draw a tree. I'm going to draw a tree. Now, what you find is that mistletoe is extremely green and it lives here. So it's able to survive there. So that's your mistletoe. Now, I'm telling you now, year 9, mistletoe is the parasite. And unfortunately, the tree, doesn't matter what tree it is the host. Now, the mistletoe is extremely green. Now, in order for a plant to be green, it needs to be taking part in a process called photosynthesis. I'm not going into the equation, year 9, until you're a bit older, but photosynthesis is where a plant is able to use the sunlight. Oh, I think I mentioned this before, but to make a sugar called glucose. And that sugar is food. Okay, that glucose is food for the plant to be able to grow. Now, hopefully, just by being a baby in primary school, you should learn the fact that, okay, right, so sorry, I don't know why I took my pen off there. Let's try and change my colour. That roots don't dangle down. You should not be walking through a park and imagine you walk in and see loads of roots dangling down into the soil. That is not natural. Now, instead, what mistletoe does, very clever, is it actually puts its roots in the bark of the tree, in the trunk of the tree. Its roots embed into that trunk. So why is that bad? Right, the tree, well, let's go for the mistletoe. The mistletoe uses its roots in bark of tree, taking all of the nutrients. It actually takes all of the nutrients away. All of the water and all of the minerals go up these roots, okay, and they go into the mistletoe. Now, why is that bad for the tree? Because the tree, therefore, lacks nutrients. It can't get the nutrients because the mistletoe is taking all the nutrients from the roots that's inside the bark, and therefore the tree tends to die. And therefore, in this situation, the mistletoe, the parasite, actually kills the host. Not all the time, but most of the time, boys and girls, the plant actually dies. Sorry about my writing again, and it actually kills it. Okay, so if you look at the learning objectives, you should now be able to realise the following. Okay, you should be able to identify and describe a parasitic relationship. And you should now be able to tell me 3 examples. So we've looked at the mistletoe. We've looked at the tapeworm. And we've looked at the head lice / fleas, which are exactly the same. Okay? So boys and girls, what I'm going to get you to do, I'm going to get you to pause this, okay, and have a go at this task. Here is an example of a tapeworm. And here is an example of a head lice, which are 2 parasites. And there are adaptations there, year 9. Now, what I mean by an adaptation, okay, is anything the organism has that allows it to survive in that environment, to allow it to do its job. Or a bit like a polar bear. A polar bear is white because it allows it to camouflage in the areas that are cold and are covered with snow. So please pause this, year 9, and see if you're able to work out which adaptation goes to which picture for me. Okay, I'll go through the answers in a minute, year 9. Okay, so boys and girls, let's go through it. So, answers. You should have realised actually Okay, you should have realised actually eggs are glued to hairs to prevent them falling off. So actually that would be the head lice, boys and girls, because they need eggs. The whole point, reasons why you get more head lice year 9 is because it makes eggs which glue to this hair and therefore they reproduce. Okay, sharp claws to grip onto hair and skin. Hooks and suckers, the first keyword I'd looked at was intestine, so I'd have gone here. Flattened body allows absorption through the digestive system, so that's this one. Sharp mouth parts can pierce skin and suck blood. Anything to do with the blood, boys and girls, is this one. And this one's probably the most difficult, but segments contain male and female sex organs, so fertilization can occur. Boys and girls, that's actually that one. And the big giveaway is because it has segments. So please, year 9, make sure, correct any of them. And if you haven't corrected them, make sure that you've got them in your notes because they are quite important. Okay, right, so let's have a look. Right, the female mosquito can carry Plasmodium protocyst. The protocyst causes malaria in humans. When the female mosquito breaks the skin of a person, the Plasmodium is transferred into the blood of that of a person. What I want you to do, I just read that for you, is I want you to pause this year 9 and have a quick go at the task. Okay, right, so boys and girls, hopefully you did that. What I'm going to do is go through that. So you can see that you should recognise this actually year 9 from a previous topic, but there's something called Plasmodium. It's a protocyst causing malaria in humans. When the female breaks the skin of a person, it's transferred into the blood of a person. The survival of Plasmodium is dependent on the living on the blood of another species. Right, boys and girls, you should have realised actually Plasmodium is causing malaria, which in my opinion in a human harms the host. And the Plasmodium lives on the blood, which benefits. So I'd be thinking this must be a parasitic relationship. So if you put parasitic, give yourself a tick, give yourself a mark out of 1. The photograph shows a mistletoe plant growing on a tree. You can see that. The mistletoe plant uses nutrients from the tree. This causes the tree to die. We knew that, hopefully. Complete the sentence by putting a circle around your answer. The relationship between the mistletoe plant and the tree is parasitism. You should have put B. And last but not least, boys and girls, the mistletoe plant also gains energy from sunlight to produce glucose. State the name of this process. It's photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, boys and girls, is the process by which we make food, okay? And it's glucose, which allows the mistletoe to survive by using its roots inside the tree. Okay, next relationship, boys and girls, I'm going to talk about is a mutualistic relationship. Mutualism. So mutualistic relationship. Really important relationship, boys and girls, because actually this is completely different. It's where they both benefit in this situation, which I personally prefer because you'd prefer both the organisms benefiting. Right, a big example, guys, is actually pollination. Now, pollination is something that happens in everyday life, and it's one of the most important processes that take place. Now, you might not know this, but what flowers do is flowers actually produce nectar. Now, nectar is like a sugar that bees absolutely love. Okay, so the nectar is like a food or a sweet substance for the bee to survive. Now, what this bee does, I'm not going mad with the bee, but the bee lands on it, takes the nectar, which is good. What also the flower produces is pollen. Now, boys and girls, pollen is the male sex cell. So it's like sperm. Boys, you produce sperm, which allows you to have a baby. Flowers produce pollen, which allows it to reproduce. So imagine, look, this is the pollen. Actually, it's a different colour. So imagine, look, this is the pollen. Sorry, I'm getting there. So look, this is the pollen, which is blue, and this is pretty much the sperm. Imagine there's another flower here. Now, when that fluffy bee is kind of trying to eat the nectar, the pollen actually goes onto the bee. Then that bee then goes on to another plant, and it's able to reproduce. How is this mutualistic? The flower reproduces because of the transfer of pollen from the bee. And what does the pollinator get, the bee or the wasp? the bee gets nectar, which is a food. They both benefit in this relationship, and they've actually evolved year 9 in order to benefit with each other. Okay, let's go through some examples. Right, this is a bit of a crazy picture. Okay, this the big thing there is called a wild cow. I'm just gonna do green. Is green a good colour? Yeah, right, wild cow or a buffalo. And these birds, if you noticed them, are called oxpeckers. An oxpecker is a bird. The wild cow is a large cow. And you can see that the oxpecker has got its whole body, or its head, sorry, up its nostrils. So you're probably thinking, why on earth? Right, this is a mutualistic relationship. You might have realised, from large herbivores such as this and horses, you actually get a lot of flies that fly around their eyes and fly around their skin. And what these flies are doing is they're actually eating bits off their fur. They get parasites and they get little bugs, little microorganisms inside their fur. So it must be really irritating. Can you imagine having a fly constantly by your eyes and by your mouth 24/7? So why is this mutualistic? The oxpecker cleans the cow. And what I mean by cleans the cow is it removes flies or organisms or microorganisms, from its nose and from its skin and cleans it. So who does that benefit if it's getting cleaned? The wild cow benefits. Yeah? What does the oxpecker, the actual bird, get from that? It gets food. The nutrients it's taking from its fur and from its nose is the food it gets. The the buffalo or the wild cow, gets cleaned and therefore removes flies and just makes it healthier in general. It's a mutualistic relationship. They both benefit. Boys and girls, next one, as crazy this is a crocodile and a bird. Now, in most situations, people would think, well, why on earth is the bird in a crocodile's mouth? Bird and crocodile relationship. We don't need to know the name of the bird. Right, you might be able to tell, but the bird is actually cleaning the mouth. Now, again, and you're probably thinking, well, it doesn't matter if the mouth gets cleaned, it's only just got dirty teeth. But actually, boys and girls, crocodiles can't clean their teeth like humans. If we get a little bit of meat stuck in our teeth, we'd need to floss or brush our teeth. If we kept that meat in our tooth for a long time, it would become infected and fall out. Now, what that bird does, if there's a little bit of meat stuck in it, is it takes the meat. So the bird cleaning the mouth, removing meat, and what that does is not only clean it, but helps its health. So it actually stops disease, or stops it from losing a tooth, which could get infected. It just helps its long-term health. Okay, so the birds, so that's what the crocodile gets. That's how the crocodile benefits. Yeah, because it gets cleaned. So it benefits croc. What does the bird get out of it, boys and girls? Well, it gets food, the meat, or whatever, the vegetation, whatever is in its teeth, and therefore they both benefit, boys and girls. It's mutualistic. Okay? Next one, boys and girls, are called cleaner fish and shark. Very repetitive. Hopefully you realise that cleaner fish get food because they're cleaning this, because actually, boys and girls, you might find there's lots of parasites on a shark. And the sharks can't just kind of get their finger and flick them off. Then parasites are stuck on there. There's nothing you can do about it. All right, and it's quite irritable for the poor shark. So cleaner fish gets food. It also gets protection. If I was another fish swimming around and I was a bit hungry, I probably wouldn't go after them clean fish because it's on a shark. Yeah, what does a shark get out of it? It gets cleaned, which overall helps or increases long-term health. Okay? Boys and girls, I'm going to quickly mention this one. This one's a little bit more difficult, but this is called a coral polyp, and they live inside the sea. They're the clear things. And inside the coral polyp is green algae. Right, algae are single-celled, but the most important thing from that is they take part in something called photosynthesis. Now, we know photosynthesis produces glucose, which is a food. Why have they kind of put this relationship together? So why did the algae could live out here, but instead the algae lives inside. Reasons why the algae lives inside is because it's now got shelter, protection. Yeah, it lives inside a polyp. Nothing's going to really eat it. Okay, what does the polyp get? The polyp gets food, glucose from photosynthesis. It's completely a mutualistic relationship, year 9, because they both benefit. Okay, so boys and girls, can you pause this and have a go at the following tasks? Okay, year 9, hopefully you pause that. So the photograph shows a crocodile holding its mouth to open, mouth open to allow a crocodile bird to feed. That's lovely. Type of symbiotic. Symbiotic just means pair, like a relationship between a pair. And between two organisms, you should have put boys and girls is B. Give yourself a tick. Suggest why this relationship is beneficial to the crocodile. You should say something like it gets cleaned, its mouth, meat, anything like that for 1 mark, which aids long-term health. So stops it from dying of an infection, stops it from, it just allows a higher chance of survival. Okay? Boys and girls, once before that, we're nearly at the end of the video, year 9, so what I want you to do is go back to the learning objectives. You should now be able to identify and describe a parasitic relationship. Year 9, I want to make that clear. In an exam, it might not always be the crocodile and the bird as an example. It could be a random animal that you've never heard of, or animals. As long as you realise that a parasitic relationship harms the host and benefits the parasite, whereas a mutualistic relationship benefits both, you should be able to recognise the type of relationship. You should now be able to describe me the adaptations of 2 different parasitic species, to make sure you've got them in your notes, and explain how mutualists benefit. We looked at 3 examples. We've looked at the oxpecker, we've looked at the cleaner fish, and we've also looked at the crocodile. Okay, so year 9, what I want you to do, I did this last time, sorry, bear with me. Okay, is go on to that PowerPoint, that slide, sorry, that I'm showing you here, so please pause in a second. I want you to draw that spider diagram out in your notes and answer the questions. The only thing I'm meaning to do is change that to mutualistic. So year 9, please, well done, please pause this video and attempt that task to make sure that you've understood the tasks and the content today.